All right, welcome back to The Quiet Part Out Loud. We are here today with Shelley Powell, EVP at Suncor, board member, and 2025 Calgary Influential Women in Business Award winner for Large Enterprise. Welcome to the podcast.
Awesome to be here. I've never done a podcast, so it's very exciting.
Well, we'll take it easy on you.
We're glad your first podcast is this one.
Yes.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
It's like just chatting with some friends, hopefully. Our first question for everybody is if your life was a movie. So if
it would be a short TikTok, maybe.
It would be a reel.
It would be just a reel, maybe a boomerang.
Yeah.
What would it be called? And can you give us a little idea about the plot, about the storyline?
What would it be called? Probably something along the lines of like So Far, So Good. I think I've done a lot of things. I've covered a lot of ground, but certainly not anywhere close to being done. Plot. So I grew up in a military family. So plot starts with a lot of change, a lot of moves, a lot of new cities, a lot of new friends. Ended up with a chemical engineering degree, kind of part way through that, kind of fell into it. I came out of high school being really good in math and science, which back then meant you were going to be a nurse. So I applied to nursing school, found myself sitting in the guidance counselor's office because I didn't know what else to apply for. And quite literally, there was an engineering poster on the wall. And the guidance counselor said, "Hey, you know what? You've got all the prerequisites for this. Why don't you just throw your application in and see what happens?" And I got in. So then I was faced with, did I want to be a nurse or an engineer? I didn't really know anything, literally anything about being an engineer. But as I talked to people, kind of family and friends and people I worked with at the time at the IGA grocery store, everybody seemed to be enamored with being an engineer. And that is quite literally how I found my way into chemical engineering. So when people think about, life aspiration, plotting, like a plot, I don't know that I would have a plot. So with that chemical engineering degree, came out of school in the mid-90s, which was a recession. So again, no plot. Nobody was hiring engineers. So whatever I thought I was going to do with this engineering degree certainly wasn't going to happen. But was really fortunate enough to start my career with Suncor at the refinery in Sarnia as a process operator. So again, nobody was hiring engineers. So I took what I could get, was an operator in a hydrocracker for a few years. So I had a pipe wrench and a flashlight and worked on shift in a control room. Then eventually moved on to doing engineering and just kind of career went from there. So certainly not a typical plot line, but here I am.
And here you are.
So far, so good.
I love the title.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it leaves open opportunities for the future. And one of the things that resonated with me, or that I was struck by when you were talking about your journey, is how much did like intentionality play into it versus being open to opportunities?
Great question. Probably very little as I look back in hindsight. Certainly one of the things I really encourage when I mentor folks is I tell them, say yes to everything. Say yes to the things that scare you. Say yes to the things that you don't think you're qualified to do. Say yes to the opportunities that come along, because often people see things in you that you don't see. And I think saying yes to the opportunities that were put in front of me, not being super intentioned, but really being open, curious. I'm a big learner. Like I'd love to just learn about things. So I think I've taken on roles that were put in front of me and moves and, going to different places that if I had been super intentional and had an intentional path, I might not have done.
And what would you say was the hardest thing you ever kind of took on and jumped into? And how did you learn to get into that?
Certainly some of the toughest moments in my career have been associated with very tragic safety events with work. I mean, those are really tough moments where leadership counts, where you have to step up when people are looking to you, and at the same time you're dealing with the emotions and the reality of something that tragically has just happened. So those have been the toughest, but they're also the moments you learn a lot about yourself, you learn a lot about leadership style, you learn a lot about kind of the team around you. And you also learn that you can actually get through these tough and difficult moments. It builds that resiliency, it builds confidence, but man, they are tough in the moments.
I find also in those moments, it's great to have a mentor or to be able to watch somebody else go through that as well. So, do you have somebody that you kind of have modeled yourself after, or even just observed and kind of tried to be that way?
Yeah. I would say have over the course of my career, not always with the best outcomes. I think that's certainly one of the things as I think back about my own leadership. People only see the success. They really don't see the parts of your career that have gone very, very poorly. And the first manager role I ever took on was an operations manager role in the refinery. And there were three of us. This was in Sarnia still. And these two other gentlemen that were in the role were of like a different generation than I was at the time, kind of came up through the organization in a very different way, had a very different leadership style. Were of the model of like bang on the table and yell at people. And so as I came into the role, that was all I saw as a leadership kind of model. So I first stepped into it and I tried to emulate that. So I had not been like that up to that point, but I started like kind of, maybe tapping on the table. I don't know that I ever banged on the table, but started behaving in a way that was really not who I was. And I did that for a couple months and was hating it. Wasn't good at it, was not working for me, hated it. And then finally, one of the gentlemen on my team came into my office one day, and I think he had been nominated. He was the poor guy that had to come talk to me. And he said, "You know what, Shelley, like, are you okay? We're really worried about you." And I was like, "Oh, why?" And he's like, "Well, you're just not yourself." And I'm like, "I know, like, isn't this so awful?" And he's like, "Yeah, like, nobody's enjoying this. So like, what exactly are you doing?" Which was kind of that moment where I realized, you know what, you just need to be yourself. Like, stop trying to emulate the people around you. There's always a nugget you can learn from, people you look up to, people that have kind of done work before you, doing similar type things. But being true to yourself and who you are and your style and your values, drifting too far away from that is what I learned, not a pleasant experience for anyone.
We often, we talk about authenticity and leadership and surrounding yourself with people that complement your skills and also encourage you to drive harder or faster or, be more aspirational. What are the skills of the people that you surround yourself with? Like, who do you need around you to help you be your best?
So something that's been really important to me, who I work for is really important because I am just innately curious and I love to learn. It's really important to me that my leader is somebody that I can learn from. So that's an important part for me. Then I like to surround myself with people who do think very differently, who, can cover some of my blind spots, some of my softer spots. People that are also willing to speak really openly to me. So I tell people, like, I'm open to feedback. Unless you pick on my children, they're probably not going to offend me at all. So give me the feedback, contribute to the team. Let's be aligned on the outcomes that we really want to drive, and then the ability to really learn and grow and try new things. That's what I'm really looking for around me.
So you did raise something there in terms of, but my kids are off limits. So talk to us a bit about that journey, being, a professional woman in a very male-dominated environment and being a mother.
Yeah, I'm fortunate now. My kids are grown. They're 23 and 25. So, I feel like the tough, demanding years are certainly behind me. But it's hard. As I look back now, that I do often kind of think, wow, how did we get through all of that? And people are often actually surprised that I have children. when again, coach and mentor and I'm meeting people for the first time, they often show up with this impression that I don't have children. And then, when I share that I do, then they're like, wow, like how does that all work? And it's trade-offs, right? It's knowing when you need to spend time with your children and when you need to spend time at work, that notion of balance, which I'm really not a fan of because I think people over-rotate on the notion of balance and they too often look across the hall or across the street and define themselves in terms of somebody else's balance or what they see in terms of what is happening. But it is a lot, and I'll be the first one to admit I think I shared my kids had the saddest looking Rice Krispie squares at every bake sale, but they weren't bothered, right? I think that's often as mothers and senior leaders in organizations, women are so hard on themselves, and we just set such a high bar and a high standard across the board that if we just gave ourselves a little bit of slack, or if we realized, somebody once told me, people don't think about you nearly as much as you think they do. Right. And we kind of can over rotate again on and just dwell on what we think, the smallest little thing we might have done wrong, or we could have said differently, or, the coulda, woulda, shoulda type things that people have probably moved on way sooner than we realize they have.
Yeah. Sometimes we tend to ruminate. I do. Like at
Oh,
the
yeah.
end of the day, as I go through my day,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I could have done this different. Like we are so hard on ourselves. And whether it's professionally or as a parent too, I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that to my kid, or maybe my tone of my voice was too harsh,
Yeah, it's the replay reel, right? Just like nonstop.
Yeah. I have little kids, and my 4-year-old had show and tell the other day, and we forgot. And so he showed up, and he didn't have show and tell, and he told everyone, "Mommy forgot show and tell." And I was just like, no one else cares, but I care.
I know, exactly. Yeah, in those moments they stick with you.
Yeah.
And you define yourself by them. You really do.
When you were accepting your award for Calgary Influential Women in Business, you recounted a few, for me, very meaningful and resonant stories and experiences where, as you're a member of the audience looking at someone who's receiving these award, and you're like, I have felt that way, I have experienced that, and I'm just wondering if you can reflect on some of those moments that you shared with the audience there, because I think it's so incredibly valuable.
Yeah, for sure. So, the reception I had to those remarks that evening has just been incredible. I've had so many people come up to me, and there was two, I think, comments that I made in particular that seemed to have resonate. And at the time when I was writing them down, I didn't think twice about them. I thought, these are just my experiences. They're nothing special. But clearly, they hit a mark of experience that other women have faced. And the first one was around. As I said, I started my career as a process operator. So I was 23, fresh out of university, newly minted chemical engineering degree. And I started at the Sarnia refinery on shift. I started on a night shift. So I don't know why I would ever start on a night shift in hindsight, but this is 30 years ago. So things have changed. And I walked into the control room, and I was working with 6 other operators, and they were all very seasoned, experienced, 20, 25-year kind of gentlemen in their field. And I remember walking into the control room that night. It's about 7:00, and I walk in, and I'm standing at the door, kind of, with my backpack in hand. And they're all sitting in the control room because they had been there probably about half an hour earlier. And I'm literally looking at them, and they're looking at me. And there's just this awkward silence of like, what are we going to do with you? And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with you? So like, where to from here? But with that really came this notion of like, okay, so how do I fit in? Like, quite legitimately, what am I going to do here? Like, how is this all going to work? It was just like we were all so different with each other. And with that, really this effort of just trying to be like them, which in this case meant I was trying to be like a 50-year-old white man. So, at the time, really, we were just stepping into the space of diversity and inclusion. It wasn't called that at the time, but there was starting to be this awareness of, okay, maybe we do have to do some work in this space. And how do we, accept people who are different than us? And what does different even look like? And what would all of that include? So more often than not, I found myself getting invited to these types of forums and focus groups and panels and sessions and, women working in male-dominated careers and those types of conferences even. And, we talk about being hard on ourselves. I took every one of those invitations as a judgment of my failure because I was working so hard to be a 50-year-old man. The fact that you would invite me to a women's conference clearly meant that I must be failing because you're not seeing me as a 50-year-old man. So it was just some of that, like, how do I fit in? How do I change to become what is here already? How do I be more like what is around me as opposed to just trying to be me? And that was that went on for years. That was a really, really long learning curve for me. Not because of anything these 6 gentlemen did. They were incredible and wonderful and, some of the deepest and best friendships I've actually ever had at work. But it was me not knowing how to be me that was really, really tough there.
I think you've hit upon something. And, we're here on behalf of Access Connects, whose mission is to accelerate more women into positions of leadership. But one of the things that we have done intentionally is to ensure that we are bringing men along this journey. And so whether it's the Access Leadership Forum or even our board of directors is like 50% representation, because sometimes these niche areas of how are we just enhancing the opportunities for women or treating women and their leadership journey differently can backfire.
Absolutely. And I'm a big proponent of, if you want to change the system, you have to be in the system. Sitting outside it on the periphery, kind of throwing stones or having hallway conversations isn't actually helpful. And so much of what I've experienced, I would say, has fallen into that unconscious type bias. Very little of it is intentional or overt, but it is the small things like welcoming the new team member at men's golf night, right? That is hard for me to participate in when all the guys get together and play poker, but I don't get invited because they assume I don't like poker, which I don't, but that's not the reason. Like, invite me anyways. I'll come or everybody gets together at the boss's place to watch the hockey game and eat pizza, except me. They assume I don't want to watch the hockey game. So it's just those small little overt things that kind of reinforce that you're not a part of the whole. You're not included. You are different. That leads to that, insecurity, lack of confidence, second guessing. And relationships are so important at work. And if you're not part of them, then you're going to be left behind.
You said that your journey through that process was a big learning curve for you. Was there kind of a trigger point where your perspective changed or your approach changed? Did something happen or was it kind of gradual?
Probably both. Like a lot of it came with just my own internal confidence with what came with experience, and also came with, I shared this moment where I tried a different style and clearly it didn't work. Like, it's those types of, failed type events that reinforce, okay, like I really just should be me. The alternative isn't a good option. So things like that helped. And then, the more confidence you have, the more things you do, the experience you get, the success you have, you start to kind of believe in, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can just be me. And that works. That's just fine.
There was another aspect that we touched upon very briefly about a moment during your acceptance speech for the CIWB award that resonated with many people in the audience. And I'm hoping that you could impart some of that as well to some of our listeners today.
Oh, the comment about Matthew was the other one. So I have 2 sons, Adam and Matthew, and I shared a story about joining Matthew's field trip. I think he was in about grade 2 at the time, and I walked in to chaperone the field trip, which I did not do a lot of. Right? You talk about, things you have to get up and give up rather, and choices that you have to make. So planning a day of work to be in the grade 2 classroom to chaperone the field trip took a lot of effort, right? Like I shared, to swap the on-call, you have to get somebody to cover a meeting, you have to get all the things done that still need to happen that day at work, but you make it happen, and then you walk in the classroom, and one of the other mothers looked at me and said, "Oh, wow, we didn't know Matthew had a mother." And it's that moment where you're just like, oh, you've got all the guilt already coming into the classroom. And I remember Matthew was so excited that I was there. And, then you start reading so much into that. Well, he's so excited. And if I was here more and could do more and all the things. And then feels like that guilt is validated by having, somebody else say that to you. So, so heavy at the time. But I have the benefit now of Matthew's 23. So I can look back. Matthew was just fine. Matthew does not remember the grade 2 field trip. That was and if he does remember anything, it was the fact that I was there and how excited he was and what a great day. But again, it's back to, a big part of what I was trying to share in that moment is that women can be the hardest critics of other women. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's a societal thing or we don't start out that way. So how is it we find ourselves here? But really just a sharing of the smallest little comments like that can just destroy somebody because you have no idea what they've been through or what it took them to get there that day or what they're going home to that evening. So why can't we just be happy for each other? Why can't we celebrate each other? Why can't we encourage the small wins? Why can't we be the biggest cheerleaders for each other? And I would love to see us make more progress in that space. So that's what was behind the Matthew story.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that, though, because that has been one of the recurring themes throughout this podcast series also is just the criticism that women face as delivered by other women is often worse, more hurtful, and more raw than the struggles that we face navigating the complexities of this journey of leadership.
I think also a common thread is this sort of distaste for work-life balance or balance in general. I mean, it's kind of a misnomer that balance exists. And so I'm curious, back then and now, because you still have to choose where you dedicate your time and energy, right? What are you saying yes to and what are you saying no to? How do you kind of gauge that? What's your way to choose?
Yeah. So it's changed through the course of my career and the ages of my children. And, when kids are little, they're very vocal communicators, right? When your 2-year-old wants some of your time, they're not subtle about it. Your 2-year-old needs time. So, those cues are really easy to adjust to and kind of, I certainly used them when my kids were little and they're having the temper tantrum. They miss you. They want to see you. They're clinging onto your leg as you're walking out. You're like, okay, you know what? I need to carve some time aside and, readjust a little bit. Gets a lot more difficult when they were teenagers, at least on my side, because they stop talking when they're teenagers, especially, my 2 boys. Everything goes silent. So then you kind of have to carve out the space and pry it out of them a little bit more. I bought the Lego Death Star. If you're into Lego at all, my kids are big Lego. So we bought the Death Star.
Oh, yeah.
It's a commitment.
Yes.
It is a commitment to Lego. But we used to do that every Wednesday night. We'd sit around the table and I could get them to spend time with me building this Lego Death Star they were into. And then we would chat in those times. So you have to be much more strategic and thoughtful and intentional and perceptive, because they won't come to you and tell you that they need your time. You've got to kind of figure it out. So that gets hard.
Yeah.
That gets much harder. And I would say I did not always get it right. There was a period in my career where I would say I got really close to being burnt out. And it was very scary. Like, it's when you get like that close to the edge, it's beyond just being tired or being busy or overwhelmed. Like, it truly is the point where like getting out of bed gets hard, because it's just everything is overwhelming and exhausting. So that, I would say, I learned the lesson the hard way of like, if you don't take care of yourself, then eventually things will catch up to you. And once you go over that edge, it's really, really hard to get back from. So again, that would be, getting it wrong taught me at least where that line was, and the importance of making time for myself.
And so how does that look like now when you say making time for yourself?
So again, I'm extremely fortunate. My children are grown now, so it is way easier now compared to like, I have nobody to drive to soccer practice or hockey practice, or there's no show and tell day to get ready for. I just make my lunch for myself. So there's all those things. But I'm also at the point where, what do I need in life these days? I need more time in my day, and I need to maintain my health.
And when you think about leadership that has inspired you, not a model that you would emulate, but something that you've been really proud of, that you've been part of, like, what are those moments for you?
Certainly when I think of, coming through difficult times with care for people, I think those are the biggest things. And, I had shared in the awards speech all the things that my mother had taught me. So my mother worked in the federal government her entire career. She was a clerk. She did not have a big title. She did not have a big paycheck, but she really valued people. She cared about people. She nurtured people. And that has always stuck with me, as you try and lead in tough situations and you have to make difficult decisions, and not everybody is going to like you. Mm-hmm. That can be the tough part of being a leader, is eventually everybody has an opinion of you. And you often probably don't want to know what some of those opinions are. They're not always, popular because of decisions you have to make. But always doing it in such a way that you're caring for people, that you're being thoughtful on how your decisions are going to impact them, and that you're not making these decisions kind of willy-nilly in the absence of considering what these impacts are going to be. Those are the things that as I look back and, where am I most proud? It's, maybe difficult decision, maybe not popular decision, but where my team around me, my colleagues, my coworkers, where we've really been thoughtful about people has made the difference for me.
And what does the future hold for you? Getting back to our first question with regard to the plot line of your movie. Yeah. Now we're in the sequel.
Yeah. We're in the unintended sequel, right? So I think that's what we established, that getting to this point had no plot, it had no script. Yeah. So I don't know that the go forward will be overly scripted either. But certainly, I am much closer to the end of my career than I am to the beginning. So that's for sure. And I think I'm very much to the point, like, today's conversation is helping others around me now. Like, I truly am to the point where this isn't about me anymore. I have been so fortunate and accomplished so much more than I ever set out to achieve. So now for me, it really is about how can I help those around me? How can I coach and mentor and support and encourage and, pick people up that maybe need a pickup or a hug or whatever that looks like in that moment. That's really where I see my contributions going forward in the future, whether it be one-on-one individuals, with broader organizations, with social profit organizations, whatever that might be. A lot of people helped me along the way, so now I'm very much into the space of how can I help other people around me. So hopefully a lot more of that in the future, and hopefully many more years to come.
There are many organizations like Alberta Cancer Foundation and Canada Powered by Women that I know are incredibly grateful for your leadership and dedication to those causes.
Yeah, and I would say likewise. I get so much out of these organizations. I learn so much, first of all, which is a big part of, somebody who's a lifelong learner who is curious. And I get to meet so many other incredible women. So it is very much an opportunity for me to get as much as I can out of each one of these engagements. So I love them.
Well, you made a comment earlier that in order to change a system, you have to be in the system.
Mhm.
And it really seems like you're trying to do that, whether it's through a board role or in your leadership position at Suncor. So
I
I'm
try
curious.
to.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious kind of what your philosophy is around inclusive workplaces and how you approach that in your current role and, maybe through those other roles.
Yeah. So I am very fortunate. I mean, I'm not naive enough to not appreciate that, with a senior role comes influence, and it opens a lot of doors, and it gets me in a lot of rooms now that I might not have otherwise have been in. And it gets me an audience that I also might not have otherwise had. So I do view it as an opportunity to kind of help folks just understand a different perspective, understand the path and the experiences I've had, share my stories on, hey, you know what, when you're inviting a new person to the team, don't welcome them on men's golf night, right? Just don't do it. And it's not that those decisions weren't well intended. I'm sure men's golf night is really lots of fun, but it's not inclusive. So it's around just encouraging like the positive, the things that are welcoming, the things to consider. And at the same time, I am, I do have the privilege and the luxury of being able to voice things that are maybe uncomfortable in some of those rooms that maybe other folks might be afraid to share or afraid to say or afraid to intervene. It can be tough to coach other senior leaders maybe around you, but I'm very much feel that I'm at the point of my life and my career where I've got the ability to do that. And I think, I owe it to all the other women that have gone before me and that are going to come after me. If we're going to change the system, we need to be able to step into that system.
And what would you have in terms of advice for women who are still kind of navigating their career and don't know what's next, don't know what the plot to their story is? What would you say to them?
Say yes to everything. Especially like don't overthink it, don't overwork it. You're probably stressing yourself out in doing that. I think I shared certainly when it came to, my children and parenting, it will all work out. Your kids are going to be awesome if you love them and do your best. That's really what they need and what they thrive on. And just try the things that scare you, that you don't think you can do. Like I said, so many times in my career, I had people believe in me when I didn't believe in myself. Like I remember more than one occasion being offered a role or an assignment and be like, what? Are you sure you got the right person? Like, what makes you think I can do this? And they'll be like, I don't know, trust us. Like you can do this. Like we want to stretch you or we want you to develop this or, in some cases, well, we don't actually know if you can do it, but let's give it a try and let's
give it a
see.
try.
So I
Let's
think
say yes.
let's say yes. And too often, women have a tendency to step back rather than step forward because we don't check every single box on the list. So let's we don't want to upset anyone. So let's not do
Don't want to rock the boat.
Well, and getting back to our conversation earlier, I think we also internalize and overanalyze those experiences, whether it's at the end of the night and you're kind of playing your day out in your head. If you go for something and you didn't get it, I think that strikes harder on women. I think guys are like, oh, there'll be another time, or like, well, they're a loss, and we're like, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Rejection.
What could I have done differently?
Or like, hey, that worked out pretty good. Maybe not 100%, but still pretty good, right? Whereas I think sometimes we will focus on the part that didn't work out well. I think that is very true. So part of that is just letting it go. I think that comes with, for me, certainly just experience and a lot of failure too. Like I really do believe that we get the most confidence from the things that don't go well and knowing that we can get through them. And then we learn something on, okay, well, now we know what worked or what didn't work. And And how do you plow through that? So it is like we have a tendency to, you read the LinkedIn or the headshot with the bio, and it only ever has the good stuff. It
Totally.
doesn't have like the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But we need to recognize everybody has that other stuff.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's part of what makes us who we are. It's part of, sharing stories. And I think it is so important, John, being able to connect so that when anybody is going through this, men, women, any other groups, that you do realize you're not going through it alone.
And so how did you cultivate, whether it's that network around you, whether it's those friends or those colleagues that you can reach out to say, I'm struggling with this? Like, what role did that support system play as you navigated the successes and the challenges?
Yeah, I would say really important. Something about me that folks are often surprised to learn is I'm an extreme introvert. Like, oh, I'm so just happy by myself. So, that group is hard because I do need it. But at the same time, I'm just so happy to just sit and, percolate in my head. So even more so, the need to kind of force myself out into, small groups for me, just because I am an introvert and it's where I am most comfortable. But just, a small group of really trusted friends. And I think that is the biggest thing, especially the more senior you get in organizations or the types of problems that you're trying to solve. Knowing that there, are women and men in my group that I can reach out to, that I trust, that, will have good advice or good counsel or just good listeners. Sometimes I just need somebody to listen to me talk, just so I can talk out and get outside of my head rather than being too far into it. So it is critically important. Like, that's back to the whole notion of balance is, balance doesn't mean you're there by yourself on the teeter-totter doing it all on your own. It means pulling on what you need to pull on. And I don't think we talk about that enough.
I think sometimes even when I have conversations with colleagues or friends, I'll start by saying, do you want me just to listen, or are you looking for some advice? Because then people know, like, what role do I play in helping you navigate this journey? Is it as someone by your side? Is it your champion? Is it someone who's going to give you some criticism, some feedback along the way?
I heard someone say, do you need help? Do you need to heal, or do you need a hug? Like, do you need me to help you with that problem? Work through it? Or do you want me just to give you a hug?
I wonder if that works with our children too. Can you just hug me? Particularly like mine are teenagers, and it's like, I just need you to hug me.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah. Let me know there's something in there.
I always like to tell folks, listen, my advice is free and you get what you pay for. So, like, I am happy to share advice and my perspective, and it's also take it or leave it. Like, I'm not bothered, I'm not offended. Maybe it doesn't fit, maybe it's not what you're looking for, but always willing to listen and share.
What are your top recommended 3 books or podcasts if you don't read?
So I am a podcast listener, but in a very narrow genre. I listen to all like the murder mystery podcasts. So that's great. So probably, not the best category for this book. So I am a ferocious reader. I read everything, fiction, nonfiction, across the gamut. So I don't know that I could narrow down 3 books, but anything by Brené Brown, Simon Sinek. He just wrote a really good one, The Infinite Game, if you've ever heard of that one. Great book on identifying your competition. Are you even thinking about your competition, right? How to succeed. Malcolm Gladwell is awesome. And then one of my all-time favorites, not a business book, but if you're into Dr. Seuss, Oh, The Places You'll Go.
That was great.
I give that book to every baby shower I go to.
Yeah.
You're ever having a bad day, get out some Dr. Seuss.
That is a great book.
It's an awesome book. It is a good book.
Well, thank you for saying yes to joining us on the podcast today. We are grateful for your input and your perspective, as I'm sure our listeners are, and we hope that you will join us again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
The Quiet Part Out Loud is produced by Access Connects and brought to you by Oh, wait, is there a sponsorship opportunity there? Learn more at accessconnects.com.